Let's bring in Antoni Trenchev, co-founder of Nexo, to weigh in on the latest when it comes to Libra. Do you think that Facebook badly miscalculated in terms of the regulatory pushback they're seeing?
Well, I think it's a classic situation of glass half full, glass half empty. What is for sure that it's gotten much more complicated than last time we talked about it when I was on here. I think that the value proposition of the project is still there. Low cost cross-border payments that settle almost instantly. I think the world is going to profit off that. You know, a cryptocurrency that is backed by a basket of currencies and you know, short-term government securities. Obviously, there are a few clouds coming up. We'll see after those clouds clear how exactly the product is going to look. But you know, if it comes to be, we at Nexo we would instantly onboard it for our loans and as a payment instrument that we accept. And you know, I try and stand optimistic, but there was some miscalculation as to the regulatory pushback.
And when you talk about things having become more complicated since the announcement of the launch, what's actually changed?
Well, I mean, it's all about perception, and I think that, you know, people in my space and I personally, and we at Nexo, we had expected the Libra leadership and Facebook to have done the proper legwork, you know, securing, you know, if not consent, then at least a nod from the regulators, because that's not some mom and pop shop doing something. This is Facebook with a user base of close to 4 billion. So this is a massive, massive grand project, which obviously has to comply with AML and KYC procedures. And if you're against that, you're on the wrong side of things.
Marcus, come in.
Well, I think what Facebook are trying to do here is clearly replicate some of the success you've seen with WeChat and Alipay in China. And Libra is clearly their instrument to do that. As you say, they have a big advantage with the installed base they have of nearly 4 billion customers across the globe. But they have to be very careful not to step on the central bank's toes and influence their ability to influence monetary policy.
And that's not step on central bank's toes. It's a really good question, but I don't know how they cannot step on their toes, given, you know, the installed base. Well, I don't know how many, 1.4 billion. I don't know how many Facebook there are. I know it's over 1 billion. Yeah.
Well, I think that's why this is very different to other cryptocurrencies you've seen launched, because this will be far larger in terms of potential scale. So the influence it potentially has is much greater than many of the other cryptocurrencies you've seen launched. And I think this is why you're seeing some of the regulators push back.
Yeah, why would central banks allow this to happen? I mean, we had a central banker in here earlier, Stefan Ingves from the Riksbank, and I got the impression that that the central banks would have a response, but it would be them leading a digitalization of money rather than the private sector.
Right. Well, that does make sense. But however, we got to think of the composition of Libra as a cryptocurrency. It's not going to be akin to, you know, Bitcoin or Ripple or Ethereum, where it has little intrinsic value. It's going to be a cryptocurrency which is actually backed by fiat currencies, you know, pounds, euros, dollar, all of them, and short-term debt instruments governmentally issued. So I don't think that's necessarily a challenge to the status quo. It is just bundling it up and backing the cryptocurrency, which is not inherently creating a new currency, which could be seen as a challenge to.
So that brings me back
banks.
to the conversation I had with a property developer around this desk a couple of years ago, and that lady will remain nameless. And she tried to explain to me why it was great to buy this property in cryptocurrencies. And I said, well, I don't understand how you can pay your bills and your builders in crypto. Oh no, it's fully convertible to dollars. I'm like, well, why would anyone change their dollars to crypto back to dollars again? What's the point of the crypto if it's backed by fiat currency?
Well, a few things. I mean, Bitcoin is the best performing asset of the past decade. Hands
Bitcoin
down,
is one
it
of the
has
most volatile performing assets, where it's a sure recipe for people who don't know what they're doing. Whenever people ask me about Bitcoin, I always say to them, do you understand the product? And they say, no. And then the second question I say, can you afford to lose the money? And they invariably say no. So I say, well, then there's two criteria why you shouldn't touch Bitcoin.
Well, that's risk management and money management strategy, how everyone addresses their personal portfolio, but
Sure.
it is a fact that if you
do you know what Bitcoin's worth?
I know that
you know
if you take the longer view over the past decade, it has outperformed any other asset.
Sure.
Yeah, hands down. And then the second thing I know, it has a small part has a place in everyone's portfolio for the sole reason that
When it went down
putting
from
putting
12,000 to 8,500 or 8,311 that it is now, did you understand why it went down?
Well, everything that goes 4x in a few months is bound to have
And when
correction.
it went
This
from
is, I mean, it's
8,300
no different than
to
the
12,000, do you understand why it
Tesla
went
stock.
up? What I'm saying is people don't understand why it's moving one day to the next, up or down. I'm not an advocate for it, and I'm certainly not a detractor. If you don't understand why something's moving, why would you touch it?
You would proceed with caution, because having it in your portfolio actually improves your Sharpe ratio by a serious amount, and this is a measurement of risk adjusted returns. And for instance, at Nexo, we also give you the means of holding on to your Bitcoin over the long term and accessing the value of your crypto via loan, which could be in 45 different fiat currencies.
Yeah,
so
that's my next question. I know you're let me have a look. You're one of the leading instant crypto-backed loans provider. In the world of free money, why do we need a crypto-backed loans provider when there is money sloshing around at I had a central bank here with negative rates for his banks earlier on as well. Why do we need crypto-backed loans in a world where we have how much has private equity got? Trillions around at the moment.
Well, apart from the obvious reasons that we had from towards disaster with the expansive monetary policy, but that's a whole nother topic. Why we need a crypto lender is because the space is very vibrant. It's moving. It is propelling innovation. And there are a lot of people that hold on to their crypto, and exactly so that they can take the longer view, we are there to provide them short-term financial instruments which they can borrow against their holdings, meet their short-term liabilities.
Much cheaper than other people's interest rates.
We go as low as 5.9% per
So
year.
you lend money at 5.9%. What does Allbirds lend money at? Sorry, UBS.
Yes,
It's
UBS,
wrong century.
Yes, I would have from the 1990s. That's a blast from the
What's
past.
the lowest interest rate UBS?
I've no idea, but I know we have. Well, I know. Well, you can have negative rates, obviously, in
So
Switzerland.
why would I borrow money if you're at 5.9% when I can go to UBS?
Because you get to keep your Bitcoin at the same time. It's very similar to what UBS, for instance, is doing with Lombard credits against gold, where you can have physical gold. Put it with UBS, they would give you then cash, and you can go on and buy even more gold. We're doing now the same thing with tokenized gold. We do that with all sorts of cryptocurrency. It's just a different product, and people are utilizing it. That's why in the past 18 months, we have, as a startup just launching, we have processed over $1 billion. So, I mean,
and do you think on that point,
need is
actually, because
there.
as it's used as leverage,
Gotta be very quick.
but the regulators want to know how you're creating leverage, and can you track that? Can they see that? Can the governments, can the central banks see how much leverage has been created?
Well, we actually encourage under leverage, because if you have $10,000 worth of Bitcoin, we're only going to give you 50 cents on the dollar. Okay. So encourage under leverage, much like what you guys do, for instance, with gold.
We've got to leave it there. Great conversation. Thank you very much indeed. Nice to see you. Antoni Trenchev, who is co-founder of Nexo.